Take two.
Welcome to the While You Grow podcast with Dr. Courtney Addison and me, Addison Powell, where we will dive into all things pediatrics, occupational therapy, and other important topics around children and development. So, if you are a parent, occupational therapist, student, or just want to learn more about occupational therapy and pediatrics in general, then keep listening. For more information on the podcast and to follow us on social media, take a look in the show notes. Let's get started. All right, welcome to the While You Grow podcast. Again, another Zoom one. I'm Addison.
I'm Dr. Addison.
And today we have Alycea, who is a former classmate of, or not, no, she is a classmate, not a former classmate.
Yeah, she's still your classmate.
That's true.
Yeah.
I haven't seen her in a while.
That's true.
But anyways, so yes, Alycea is joining us today to talk a little bit about her capstone. Alycea, why don't you talk about it just a little bit?
Well, let's let her introduce herself.
Oh, well, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Where are you from, Alycea? What are you studying and what do you love to do?
All right, so my name's Alycea, obviously. I am originally from New York, but I live in South Carolina, and I'm studying occupational therapy, like Addison. And some things I like to do is I like to go hiking. So on my downtime,
You didn't know that?
You know, your whole time here, you were talking about the hiking trip that you did. I didn't know you were like a big hiker.
Yeah.
She's not a hiker, she's a hiker.
Yeah, I hike all the time.
I've seen like some of your photos and stuff. You go to some pretty like crazy places.
Yeah, and throughout this whole process too, I've been at a lot more areas of like hiking and exploring, so those will be coming out soon too.
So you're saying you picked your capstone based on hiking?
No.
It just worked out in her favor.
It did just work out that way. Yeah, it worked out perfectly.
Awesome.
But especially with the intensity of my capstone, so I'm doing my capstone at a juvenile correctional facility. So with the intensity of my capstone, it's nice that the mountains are right here because I could go after work and, you know, hike for an hour or two. And then, yeah, so it's a good reliever.
Yes.
I bet. You're probably in a very high stress environment for sure.
Yes, and you definitely have to be on all the time. And so juvenile correctional facility, what that is like youth are incarcerated. So think of like adult jail. It's the youth version of that. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
So kind of getting into like my little crime junkie here, what kind of crimes are these youth you're working with have committed or been charged with? What are some of the crimes?
Yeah,
so it's your basic crimes, right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's all crimes, but it's like, so I work with like the general population. That's like an overarching thing. So there's no like specialty. So by specialty, I mean like gang affiliated or like substance abuse or sexual abuse, things like that. So I'm working with like the general population. And so the typical offenses that these youth have committed can be anywhere from like theft, which could be like a car or money, or all the way up until first-degree murder. Wow. So, so I have a couple youth that I've been working with who have committed murder, and then I have some who like committed theft. So it just depends. It varies.
It varies.
Yes.
What got you motivated to do this capstone? I think for our listeners out there, again, just a reminder, the capstone is kind of the last culminating project of a doctoral project in the entry-level doctoral program. So what, and in our program at Presbyterian College, you get to essentially select your own capstone. So you get to, whatever motivates you, whatever kind of gets your ideas going. What made you pick this one? Because looking at you, Alycea, I'm not sure that I would pick that for you, but whenever you told us that you were going to pick this, it kind of made sense. So describe what motivated you to do this capstone.
Yeah, so I think like growing up, like I've always had this like drive to work with youth who have like troubled youth or youth who have like come from a very like difficult situation and have made like bad choices. And so I've always like wanted to do something with like working with at-risk youth. And so thinking about that, like what could I do with that as far as like OT wise, and the different avenues with that. And I thought that like I was looking into foster care at first, because that's like a big realm for at-risk youth as well. And so after I was looking into that, I came across like, the juvenile justice system and like detention centers and correctional facilities and things like that. And so I noticed that there was a gap, like there's no OTs really working in correctional facilities or helping youth in correctional facilities. And youth that are typically in these settings come from like a very difficult background, maybe have a couple adverse childhood experiences against them, and or that they have faced like during their childhood. And I just know like when they are incarcerated, like a lot of their occupations are disrupted and they're not able to participate in anything like very meaningful to them. Their privacy is stripped. And so like these are kids who have experienced trauma early in life, right? And then they're going into another like a facility, possibly growing up in that facility and not able to like fully participate in those options in their occupations. And so I feel like they need people to pour into them and have like a positive light in order to help them know that there's a different path for them despite what they may have done. And so that's kind of how I like got into it, because I see the potential that they have, and they're not just they're not their crime. They're not this one thing. Yes, they did it, and no, it doesn't make it okay that they did this crime, but they're more than that, and they have a full life ahead of them. And so I kind of just wanted to see how OT could actually fit in the juvenile justice system, and how OTs can make a huge impact on their lives.
That's really, really powerful, because I'm sure there's a lot of people, even their closest friends and family, that may have given up on them. And it's just amazing and inspiring that you just had that internal like motivation to want to help them, and you're bringing in your profession into it, and it's just amazing to see. But I know you've had a little bit of difficulties even just getting into, because this is a very at-risk population. So talk a little about the challenges that you may have faced trying to get into this setting.
Yeah, so it is definitely very difficult, especially because OT is not really well known. Although like OT has been around for a while, it's not very well known. And a lot of people are like, oh, do OTs even work on like mental health things and stuff like that? So like I was having to do like a lot of like educating and things like that to be able to talk to different people. So the location that I'm at now was my second try of trying to get into a correctional facility. The first time I tried to get into a facility, I tried to start communication with them, with a facility, and try to like educate them on like what OT can do, how they can offer, or what OT can offer and things like that. But the communication got like shut off really quick, and not because, and I don't think it has anything to do with like the facility. I think it's just like not knowing what OT could do, and not really seeing like the value in it at the time. And so the location that I'm at now, how I got into it is an OT that I know I met at a conference, and she was doing her capstone at the facility. So she was doing like a community reintegration program for them, and so she did her capstone there, and so she got me connected with them, and so they kind of already had an idea of like what OT was, and so have started conversations with them and then got in. So it wasn't smooth from there. Like there was a lot of like ups and downs with that. So we had to like get a contract between my school and the facility, and that took a long time. Like the contract didn't get approved until like a couple days of me coming out here, and it took a long time, and it was like kind of like you have to stay on top of everything, because with the correctional facilities there's a lot of things that you have to, like a process that they have to go through, and things aren't fast, right? It's slow and it takes time. And so you really have to like be on top of it and make sure that like you're communicating with them and asking like for follow-ups, like where's the process at, what can I do to like ensure that the process like gets sped up a little more and things like that. And so with part of the contract that I had to do is I also had to get insurance. And so which is personal liability insurance, and also sexual abuse insurance, like just in case something were to happen on site, like I had to get something insurance on that. And so that process also took a long time, and so I had to like meet with a broker because it had to be a specific amount that I had to get for the insurance, and so that took like a long time too. And so once everything like was okay and I got the green light, then obviously I was able to make it through Capstone, or make it to my site.
Yes, and getting to see that process and be a part of that process. Shout out to Dr. Turner for really helping with initiating this this process, because it was pretty extensive. And you know, I don't want, and I'm sure you can agree to this too, like that insurance that you had to get covered for this site. Don't let that scare you. Like if you're a student that's listening to, it's just more of semantics that you have to do to cover, you know, legally some of the things. But yes, just to reiterate, it was quite the process. And I think I don't know if you remember, Alycea was like, if they don't respond in 3 days, we got to change it up. And they literally responded on that day. And, you know, it was a lot of follow-up and a lot of different things. But you and I had a good opportunity to talk about, you know, some of the things that you had to do in terms of preparing yourself mentally for this capstone. Talk a little bit about maybe some of the emotions you felt towards it as you got towards like actually working with the clients that you get to work with each day.
Yeah, so I just want to preface, like before I was even able to work with the youth, I had to take like training, and with that training is Handle with Care. And so Handle with Care is they treat you like de-escalation tools to use with the youth if you were to get into an altercation with the youth, and then also like if the youth were to get physical or like put their hands on you or like assault you in any way, how you can safely, for all parties involved, get out of the situation and put them in a position to where they're not going to like assault you. So I had that training, just want to preface that. But although this is a population that I, you know, want to work with, it is very intimidating and daunting to work with this population because you don't know like what to expect. So when I first arrived to the facility, you have to go through a detector, and they have to like check all of your bags and make sure like you don't have like certain things. And then you go onto the facility and you see like youth, they're walking with the officers. And so it's like a very structured, like high intense environment. And so like that really like was taking a toll on me, but I didn't really notice it until I actually like started working with the youth, and I was very like nervous and like intimidated by the fact that like I'm about to go onto these units and I don't know what to expect. And so it was a very emotional and roller coaster, and thankfully, you know, Dr. Addison and I had other professors, you know, help talk me through it and really like, you know, help me through that like emotional stage to like know like, okay, like you can do this, right? You're capable of doing it. And so after like I initially started working with the youth, I was like, oh, what the heck? Like they're just kids, you know, like there's nothing like, you know, yes, it is a high intense environment and you don't know what to expect, and their crimes, you know, are, you know, all of like, you know, theft to murder, right? But at the end of the day, they are just youth, and, you know, they have made some bad decisions and bad choices, but that doesn't define who they are as a person. And so once I actually met with the youth and like humanized them in a way, it really made me feel a lot better, obviously. Yeah, but at first it was very, very rough. That's why it's like very important to, make sure that you're good, that your mental health is good. So like I was doing a lot of hikes, for instance, and my cousin also lives here. So she was also another support for me that I could talk to and just like get out of the house, get out of my mind a little instead of like overthinking things. So you definitely, need to make sure that you're in a place to be able to be helpful, because if you're not taking care of your mental health, then obviously that's going to affect everything that you do.
Yeah. I will say I don't think I could do it. So I admire you for doing this. I mean, it's so important. Like, even though it has been challenging just getting in, and then obviously you're having to deal with your own like mental health and the toll it's taking on you, like you're doing an amazing job, and it's such important work because
it's definitely important work too, to do all those things. And just, I think one of the things that you want to kind of advocate for, and we've talked a lot about like this being an occupational justice and all these things, is we need OTs in this area. Can you talk about your specific project and like what are the skills you're working on and what's the day-to-day look like for you?
Yeah, so the foundation of my program is I'm working on interoception, which is one of our 8 senses that we have. And so it's being able to like tune in with like your heartbeat and like your muscles and like different things in your body, right? To be able to help them be able to control their emotions or be able to self-regulate. And so we're really working on that like self-awareness, self-management skills, and being able to cope with one, the environment that they're in, and also like the youth that are also on the unit, because there's like about 20 youth or more on a unit, and so coming with different backgrounds, different personalities and things like that can really frustrate or irritate a youth if they become in an argument or they may clash because of personalities. And so really working on their ability to be self-aware of themselves so that they know when they're getting upset or they know when they're angry. That way they have the ability to say, okay, I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to use this strategy to help me so that I don't escalate. And so at the facility, they get violations if they show behaviors that aren't proper. And so the youth, they know all of like the violations and things. And so we really work on like talking through like the violations, and if they were to get a violation, okay, what could they have done differently in that situation? How was their body feeling in that situation? So it's really having them become aware of their bodies, because when youth are incarcerated, studies have shown that a lot of them have gone through adverse childhood experiences or trauma, and so that leads to like body dissociation a lot of the times. And so I'm trying to help them to tune back into their bodies and figure out what their body needs in that moment, to really help them.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and you're working with the youth as well. I think we talked about this a little bit, like off camera, but you're also working with the people who work there and are interacting with the youth every single day. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so they have a clinical team with psychology associates, and I work very close with them, and they meet with the youth depending on what the youth needs. They may meet with them every 2 weeks, or if they need a little bit more support, they'll meet with them once a week for like 30 minutes. And so I work closely with those staff members to kind of like figure out how we can collaborate to make provide the most support to the youth. And so I'll talk about what I'm working with the youth, and they'll talk about what they're working on the youth, and then okay, how can we help reinforce the skills and things that we're both working on. Now working with the staff specifically on the unit, that is a little bit more challenging because the staffs, which are officers on the unit, their number one priority is safety. So safety always comes first. And so it's hard to have, like, they're really good with like getting the youth for me and like helping me, like if a youth say maybe doesn't want to meet that time, right? They're good about like, okay, if I come back to see the youth, then they'll like, ask the youth, hey, like, is it okay if, you talk to Miss Graham, they call me. And so then we'll, they're very helpful in that way. As far as like carryover or like helping with like the skills learned, they do try their best in the moment that they can to help the youth, like de-escalating the youth or helping them like control, like because they work on the units all the time, so they know the youth, they know when they're being triggered and things like that, and so they'll really try to like help de-escalate the youth. And so when I talk to the officers on the unit, they're telling me like their behaviors and how the youth are doing that day or that week, so that I know what I'm getting into when I go into sessions with them.
That's awesome.
Wow. I mean, and that's just not someone who you typically would put on an interdisciplinary team, right?
No.
An officer that is working in a correctional facility. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm just getting such, again, goosebumps of like how important this project is and how like just impactful it can be, but just how much further it could go, educating, the people that work there, or providing more education, but just, this is just such a unique setting and just such a unique approach. Has there been any moments that you've been with the youth that has just been enlightening for you, or just this was a moment where it kind of gave you chills or gave you like, wow, this is important?
Yeah. So one that comes to my mind is I was working with a youth and I had another staff member in the session with us. And during our first week of the program, we worked on our senses and how, like, going through different activities that work on our senses so that they know how their body feels when they're doing different activities. And so having them tune into like hearing things or touching things or seeing things. And so fast forward to last week, actually, I was working with the youth and another staff was with me, and I had therapy that we were using during that week of week 2, and I had one that was like less intense that I gave the youth, and then I gave them one that was like more intense, and like they were like, oh my goodness, like surprised at like the difference of it, because when you look at therapy putty, it doesn't look like the intensities will be different. So during the session last week with the staff, I also had the therapy putty there because part of the program was in the beginning, like I'll ask them, I taught them like the zones of regulation and like the different color zones, and so during that, I'll ask them, okay, what zone are you in right now, and what does your body need in order to, either feel better or stay in the current zone that you're in? And so then they'll tell me. And so this youth said he wanted to play with therapy. And so he gave the less resistance to the staff member and was like, how does that feel? What does your body feel like in the moment? And I'm like, oh, okay. So he really like actually heard it, right? And then he gave her the, the more intense one. And he was like, okay, now try this one. How does that feel? Wow. And so just seeing that he, really like remembered that session and like actually like, okay, what does your body feel like in that session, and teaching somebody else what he learned. Wow. That made me like feel good, like they're actually learning something. Because at times, like when I'm in sessions with the youth, like some of the youth, I'm like, or I don't even know if that was helpful for them. Like, I don't really see it, right? Like in the moment. And then when I have them reflect on it or see them in certain situations and they, reciprocate back to me what we did in that session, I'm like, okay, they're actually like seeing it. It's just maybe in that moment, I just wasn't seeing it, right? But they were, and so not really thinking about it so much on me, but like the youth. So that was like a good moment to have with that youth.
Oh, that is such awesome. A good moment.
That makes me so happy for you. Like, I'm glad even though you've had your challenges with it. Like, I'm just really glad it's working out, and you're doing amazing.
Yes, you are doing amazing. And just, it's been nice to be part of this journey for you, Alycea, and just the way that you like kind of speak about it and just incorporate it. What would be your advice for a student out there or OTs out there about getting in this area?
I would say definitely don't give up. If this is something that you definitely want to do, just do it. Like, it's definitely worth it, although it's challenging to get in and it's nervous at first, but once you're in it and actually like working with the youth or like seeing the difference that like you're making with the youth, it's very helpful. And there's so many different avenues that OTs can go to work in the juvenile correctional facility. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be like what I'm doing. Like, there's an intake process where I see OTs can fit in, or there's the transition from, the juvenile correctional facility out back into the community. And so they could fit in there, right? So depending on like what you want to work on with the youth, or, adults, it doesn't have to be youth as well. I feel like adult prisons, can benefit from occupational therapy as well. But just don't give up, because, they really do need it.
Yay.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Alycea.
Yes.
This is, seeing this from just your little mustard seed of an idea grow into this amazing thing. And I hope you do a good job of documenting and spreading the word, and just like you said earlier, humanizing, this population, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you as a fellow student. You're doing amazing. I'm excited to see it all at the end whenever we all talk about our projects. I'm excited.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'll let Addison wrap us up.
Yes.
And we'll see you soon.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for having me on here.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the While You Grow podcast. If you learned something on this episode, please like, share, and comment. Join us next time as we dive into all things pediatrics, occupational therapy, and other important topics around children and development.